From 1978 to 1996, the most insane theme park on the planet operated in Vernon, New Jersey. It was a place without rules, a place where people laughed in the face of death, no matter how much it reared its ugly head. Here, in the hills of Vernon, people took on the most dangerous theme park rides in the world, and no matter how badly they got hurt, the park filled up each and every weekend. In the mid-70s, investor and financier Gene Mulvihill bought 2 ski resorts after his expulsion from Wall Street for various financial crimes. To make some extra money in the summertime, he installed some slides. These slides were made of concrete and asbestos and ridden using carts, almost like luging or bobsledding. It was called the Alpine Slide. Proved popular, so Gene added a water park, one of the first in the country, along with a softball field. In 1978, Gene gave his park a new name for the summertime: Action Park, where you and the rides become one. The philosophy of Action Park was that you control the rides completely. To take something like skiing, where you're in control of your destiny, and apply that to thrill rides. Dangerous as that is, people love the idea. Within a few years, Action Park was one of the biggest amusement parks in the country, with up to 20,000 people arriving every weekend to experience it. At Action Park, guests had 75 rides to choose between, 40 of them being water slides, split between 3 different worlds. The first of these was Motor World. Motor World offered go-karts, miniature tanks, and boats. The go-karts, including the traditional super go-karts and the open-wheel Lola cars, could have their top speeds tampered with so they could reach up to 70 miles per hour. Guests often raced them recklessly, frequently causing violent crashes that sent guests to the hospital. The tanks shot tennis balls at 100 miles per hour and broke down frequently. Maintenance workers sent to fix them would be shot at, making this ride the one that people wanted to work the least. The speedboats raced on a watery oval kicked into a swamp, and people constantly crashed into each other. These crashes also sent guests to the hospital, as did bumps taken in the bumper boats. The boats were too cramped for taller guests. They also leaked gasoline, which sent one person to the hospital when too much of it got on their skin. None of this was helped by the authentic German brewery put next to Motor World. It was common for people to get in the go-karts or the speedboats after drinking a few beers, which had obvious consequences. Waterworld was the biggest section of the park and the most dangerous. Many of the slides were poorly constructed, with poorly connected joints leading to cuts and bruises and murky water making it hard to see anyone below the surface. The water was also freezing cold, as it was spring-fed from the mountains. This was particularly a problem for the Tarzan swing, which let people swing like George of the Jungle from a platform and land in the water below. As they flew through the air, women pulled up their tops and men pulled down their pants. When they landed, the frigid water shocked them, leading to them being unable to swim. Roaring Springs had 2 cliffs, 16 feet and 23 feet tall, letting people jump into 15-foot deep water below. They also had a slide to shoot off the cliff. People who held their arms out as they fell often dislocated their shoulders. The deep water also surprised people, and if they couldn't swim well, they risked drowning. But the ride that made Action Park famous was the Cannonball Loop, a tubular slide, but this one twisted up into a loop-de-loop. What you're seeing was real, not Photoshop, not AI. and it frequently caused injuries from people losing momentum and smashing onto the floor of the slide, knocking out teeth and causing concussions. The teeth sometimes became embedded in the padding, cutting people who struck them. Riders also experienced up to 9 Gs from the loop, similar to what fighter jet pilots experience. This disoriented people so badly that they couldn't walk in the moments after exiting the slide. The most dangerous ride of all was the wave pool, also known as the grave pool, for reasons that will become obvious. Near the size of a football field, the waves on this pool that went 8 feet deep reached 3 feet high and went on for 10 minutes straight. The waves were stronger than anything one would experience at the edge of the ocean, and since the water was freshwater, it made swimmers less buoyant. All of this made for a pool that even experienced swimmers couldn't handle. In the time it was opened, 3 people drowned in the wave pool. Other deaths included one at Roaring Springs, when someone inhaled water as they impacted the pool, a heart attack caused by the shock of the Tarzan swing's cold water, and an electrocution, the kayak experience, when a man fell into the water and stepped on live wiring. The most well-known fatality occurred on the Alpine slide, the focal points of the Alpine Center, which were for rides not in water or using motor vehicles. George Larson was going down the slide when he, like many others, flew off the slide and hit his head on a rock, killing him. His death went unreported as the park claimed he was an employee. While he was previously employed at one of Gene's ski resorts, he was not employed by Action Park. New Jersey law allowed for employee deaths to not be reported. The park also claimed Larson rode the slide after hours and in the rain, which his family denies. The Alpine slides contributed to most of the park's injuries. Broken bones and concussions from falling off the carts, and gashes and burns from skin sliding against the concrete track made up the 50 to 100 daily injuries on the slide. Double that if it was a weekend. The reason why Action Park was so dangerous, aside from it being partially intentional, largely came down to inexperience. Many of the rides were designed by people who were anything but engineers, including Gene, who sketched the cannonball loop on a napkin, then hired day laborers to set it up as quickly as possible. This was also the early days of the water park business. Water slides were relatively new, so few knew how to make them safe. The changes based on trial and error. Action Park was no different. Suing Action Park was nearly impossible, as Gene refused to settle, and had enough money to coop people up in trial after trial for as long as possible. Most lawyers wouldn't take up cases against the park, as they knew they'd lose. But legal fees, Gene's insurance fraud conviction, and declining attendance eventually brought the park to its knees. It was sold to the Canadian Intra-West Company and reopened as Mountain Creek Water Park in 1998, with all the rides changed or removed to make it safer. In 2010, Gene Mulvihill bought the park back from Intra-West after they fell into financial trouble, but he wouldn't have it for long. Gene died in 2012 and passed ownership to his children. In 2014, the Action Park name was revived, along with many of the infamous rides, including the Tarzan swing. There were also plans for a safer, engineer-designed cannonball loop called the Sky Caliber. It never opened, and by this point the Action Park name was toxic. Despite it being much safer than the old Action Park, the park changed its name back to Mountain Creek in 2016, after the Mulvihill family sold it to Joe Hessen, a former Action Park employee. Today, Mountain Creek Water Park operates as a regional water park, but not an average one. Many who attend it will find many of Action Park's water slides still operating, but with changes made to make them safer. They remain almost as thrilling as they were in the Golden Age. For thrill seekers, Mountain Creek scratches the same itch. Many Jerseyans want Action Park to come back, seen as one of the best parts of being a kid. It was a place where they proved their toughness, a place where they laughed in the face of death. But while Action Park may be gone, its spirit lives on in the hills of Vernon, New Jersey.